Hello, and welcome to Chapter 7 of Producing Animation, the Production Team. The role of the producer in structuring the production team. Your goal is to assemble the ideal team to create something spectacular. It does not happen all at once. Not everyone is needed at the same time, but most are needed only in phases. Starting and ending dates are staggered with production plan, which means that different people will come on a certain time and will be let go once their role is over. The staff's work typically segmented as each segment or shot proceeds to each department. As the producer, you would be handpicking the core creative team to develop and launch the project. Simultaneously, you'll pick the production team to support the artistic vision. Features can employ 200 or more in-house animators at a time. Lower budget TV series or direct to DVD usually have typically 15 to 35 staff members, and you can subcontract the production portion of the project. And you'll be hearing more about that when you hear Troy Davis talking about vendors, that is, subcontractors. Why would you want to subcontract? Well, the producer should be very familiar with several shops. For example, on The Prince of Egypt, a Steven Spielberg movie that was made in the 80s, there were many companies that were brought in, but especially since it was getting near the end and they had not met their, they were in danger of falling behind their deadline. So rather than Spielberg risk getting the funding taken away from his feature, they instead divvied the work up among many animation shops, including a friend of mine in Austin, Texas, who had a shop called The Heart of Texas. And he staffed up and got, I want to say, around 75 people on staff there as one of their vendors. And they worked very hard and managed to meet all their deadlines. The picture did get released in time, but unfortunately, they did not pay the company the amount that they had agreed to, and as a result, my friend had to shut his company down after being around for 10 years or so. It was a real shame, but that was a hard lesson for him to learn that ethics play an important role in doing your work. Anyway, getting back to subcontractors, a producer should be familiar with several shops in the event he needs to farm some of this work out to other vendors. He would be the one that arranges and negotiates working conditions or the deals that are being made. He would be hired for the budgetary reasons. You hire them because it's cheaper and less overhead. When you are going through a vendor, these are not employees, but rather they're subcontractors or freelancers that you hire. So as a result, you do not have to pay their medical and tax reasons and all that. It's beneficial to go through a subcontractor as opposed to having more people on staff. And also, these are wonderful for making up for shortfalls, or if you find that you're falling behind, or just simply if you don't have the ability to have that many people on staff, it's a way for you to get the work done. The person I was citing a moment ago was Don Smith in Planet Texas, the Spielberg Prince of Egypt story. Page 148, you'd be assembling your creative team. Once the funding is in place, obviously, the producer and the director would recruit and assemble creative production team. Page 148 through 149, storyboard artist. Remember, your goal is to tell the story well visually. So in order to do that, you may have to bring in storyboard artists. In fact, you will. And it's very helpful when you're doing that before you hire them to do a portfolio review to see how good and how talented they are. Now, you're going to be hearing about this from Doug Brown, who is himself a storyboard artist. But you'll be comparing in their portfolio different styles in comparison to your project. For example, they may not do work that is anything like what you plan on doing. So, and especially with animated features, they tend to have a certain, what we call the CalArt style. They have a certain look to them that generally is considered the average for a 2D cartoon animated feature. Are they detail-oriented or are they broad stroke? That means broad stroke in this case is do they work loosely or do they work very precisely, very tightly? And also, how fast can they output boards? I mean, it's one thing to do good storyboarding. It's another to do it the faster they can do it and come out with a reasonably decent product, the better it is. Sometimes they literally have to sit in a conference room as you're talking about it and rough something out, and you'll see some examples of that in Doug Brown's talk. You'll look for a person that's best for a particular genre. Then maybe he's a better storyboarder for games or for comedies or for action dramas or for cartoons or for live action. Here, interns are ideal if you can get them. Interns will help. You get the training and you get the experience, especially when you're working alongside a storyboard artist. So if you're an artist and you're interested in the craft, what's best is to work alongside one, help him finish stuff out. You can learn an enormous amount in a very short period of time. Another thing you're always looking for, interns tend to come in with fresh ideas. They're inexpensive to free, and it's an important asset for the future because these people people who do internships generally have the drive, and they will be around once they become professionals at their craft. Page 149, when it comes time for you to hire supervisors as a producer, you must delegate. You need to find people that you can delegate responsibility to. So you don't want a flaky guy or girl, and you need to hire someone that you can feel comfortable with. You definitely should be able to trust those you hire. Supervisors, key artistic staff, production personnel also will need to be considered. You'll want to hire experienced or risk it if they aren't experienced. And balance of pros and newcomers is always good. As I talked to you the other day about Clydesdales and thoroughbreds, it's always good to have a mixture because newcomers bring fresh blood, fresh ideas, and the pros bring the experience. Page 150, communication is key. The key to running a top-notch production is communication. You can never over-communicate. Information and updating are critical. Make sure everyone is clear on a shared vision. Boy, is that important. And make yourself accessible. If someone needs to talk to you, try and find some way to make sure that happens. If you cannot be accessible, hire an associate producer who can be, to delegate some of the responsibility. It's very important to be able to be approachable by anyone that works with you or for you. Page 150, staffing up, hiring. Once a decision has been made to hire people, you need to determine whether the hire is above the line or below the line, and we've talked about in the past. Put together a deal memo outlining their salary, terms of agreement, their starting date, their job title, their reporting structure, who do they report to, and they need to sign confidentiality agreements, as we talked about earlier with non-disclosure documents. It is very important that people understand that they cannot talk about what they're working on for fear that someone may steal their idea. In this, believe me, it's happened, where people have found out that somebody's making a movie about something and they get in ahead of it, and if they do, they utterly destroy the film that's being made, the other film that's being made. Page 151, department supervisor or lead. Artistic leads are selected from each department. Then they assign work to the artist in their department. They caution against hiring most prolific artists to the job. Supervisor and department head determine, number one, who gets what assignments, and determine realistic quotas. How many people can we have on this or that crew? Page 153, crew member attributes. You look for previous animation experience, strong interpersonal skills, excellent communication skills, enthusiasm for the job, ability to prioritize, ability to ask questions and seek guidance, strong organizational skills, aptitude for problem solving and troubleshooting, attention to detail, data input and production tracking skills, proficiency at delegating, ability to follow through on action items with a goal-oriented attitude. They're going to meet their goals. Page 155, figure 7.1. That's an overview of management personnel. I would encourage you to go to your books and take a look at that. On page 153, 154, this is the production manager. He's usually, or she is usually hired at project onset and then continues all the way through post-production. They generally report to the producer. They're accountable to the production manager. They function at the producer's right hand, and they are directly responsible for managing details of a production. Page 154, you'll see what you see here on this page, which is figure 7.1. It goes through the executive producer, line producer, associate producer, production manager, production supervisor, production coordinator, production assistant, and finally intern. This is the complete totem pole of the project. Page 156, the role of production manager during production. He is responsible for keeping production on track. He assists the producer in creating a master schedule. He modifies and updates the schedule with producer input. He creates and maintains weekly status report. He establishes priorities, and communicating information is vital. He is responsible for quality of information and data to subcontractors. He must provide adequate inventory to keep artists busy meeting quotas. He must be aware of workflow in each department. For example, it's like herding cats, or another analogy would be a mother bird feeding the baby birds. Constantly feed. You have to stay at them all the time. Make sure enough storyboard sequences are approved for production, and determine what sequences may be shifted, moved from here to there, before or after, and so on. Access whether to fast track the shots or to run them through the normal course of production. Evaluate departmental workloads. Are they working too hard? Do they not have enough to do? Analyze individual artist performances. Reevaluate how art is assigned. Get overtime approvals from producer in the event you need to have people working overtime to stay on schedule rather. And to simplify shot complexity in deadline or budget crunch. This sometimes will happen when you think we don't absolutely positively have to have the birds flying through this shot, and that's going to save 3 days. So sometimes those little shots or compromises are necessary to stay on schedule. Page 156, the role of production manager during post-production. You focus on tracking retakes, aid production supervisor in scheduling, assist production supervisor in coordinating material transfers, upkeep script with insertions and revisions, and make sure the automatic line replacement, or ADR, that says LR here, it should be automatic dialogue replacement is more accurate than line here. Make sure that they're being recorded properly. Page 157, production supervisor. This role falls somewhere between production manager and coordinator for TV and direct-to-DVD. Responsible for overall project tracking. Now for feature films, that means managing multiple departments, dividing front-end and back-end responsibilities, and you'd be responsible for asset and shot production. Page 157, the production coordinator for TV and direct-to-DVD. Associate production manager, APM, or production department manager, or PDM, for a feature film. These people work closely with the department supervisors. They report to the production manager. They manage the artist's work to meet production deadlines. They're usually employed during a pre-production phase early on. They're responsible for tracking the artwork, for the shot status, where is it shot at any particular time, for artist assignments, who gets to do what, and for artist output, who is keeping up with their quotas. Upkeep and revisions to production tracking schedule is critical. They are responsible for man-hour allocation. In other words, you're trying to figure out how many man-hours would be required to get this particular scene done, or whatever it would be. You provide a rating of expected level of shot difficulty. Some shots are nothing to it, and some shots, especially with multiple characters, may require a lot of difficulty. Weekly reports on quota fulfillment. Is everybody keeping up with their load? And they must develop good relationships with the artists that work with them. Page 159 through 160, script coordinator. This person works with the writers, the story team, the editorial team, and the producers. They handle all production needs regarding the script. They assure the most recent version is in use, because there's nothing worse than animating to the wrong script. Just distribute and update page changes, which usually means it's interesting when you have a script. Sometimes the script may have 3 or 4 different colored pages. Those colored pages represent additions or changes. Usually when the script starts off, it's handed to you as white paper with black ink. But as you go along, sometimes it can mean many different colors. And it prepares the final as-is delivered script. Page 160, the production assistant, PA. On live-action shoots, these are designated all-purpose gophers. That's not necessarily a derogatory term. It just means you're new to the business, more than likely, and you're there to learn. So no one puts down production assistants. They don't get paid as much, but then they're kind of, in a sense, they're paid interns. The production assistant supports the coordinator, the APM, the PDM, and the artists. They label and do paste-up artwork. They copy and file hard or digital copies. They provide administrative support, and they gather and deliver reference supplies and materials to the artists. Page 161, Production Secretary. The duties include typing or word processing, copying, filing, distributing memos, scheduling meetings, taking messages, coordinated daily schedules, make travel arrangements, order production supplies, maintain supply inventory, and coordinate shipping needs. On page 162, you'll see figure 7.2, as you see here. It's a sample crew organizational chart for a television production. This is just sort of how it might flow, or what Dr. Watkins calls the pipeline, as a project moves through its various phases. Page 161 through 163 involves subcontractors. These are the vendors, as we talked about earlier. For TV and direct-to-DVD, often outsource subcontractors for several good reasons. They tend to be less expensive. They lower the overhead costs. They may specialize in specific areas. For example, these people do really good jobs with water, and these people do exceptional electricity, and these are the fire experts. You can shop it out to whoever you think is known to do the best job of a particular task. They also are temporary booster engines to get production back on track or back on quota. Page 163, Identifying and Selecting a Subcontractor. You would be consulting with other studios and individuals. You'd be asking for recommendations. Consult in credit of a production to see, did they actually work on that movie or did they just claim they did? If you look at the film, that'll usually tell you. They review online sample reels. They ask studio to animate a test shot or a demo. Establish creative partnership with the subcontractor. Sometimes that's done. You can determine if the subcontractor studio can handle the quantity and determine if the software or the hardware involved is going to be compatible. You can assure the compatibility of art, the look, the animation, and the quality of work, which is very important, especially if you're using multiple vendors or suppliers. Be aware and sensitive to cultural sensitivities. For example, cultural interpretations of comedy timing and dramatic acting may vary from country to country. Page 166 through 167, Negotiating the Deal. Once the subcontractor is agreed upon, then you need to spearhead the deal. You establish the following areas: the subcontractor's scope of responsibilities, what all is he going to be doing, the producer's scope of responsibilities, and the schedule, the fees, the additional fees for changes or revisions, and creative retakes. Usually one's allowed 1 or 2 rounds of changes, and then from there on you start charging again. Allow for the exchange rate, because virtually in every country, even Canada, they pay a different exchange rate than we do. Their dollar is not worth the same as our dollar, and so on. Work out the payment schedule. For example, they get paid 50% at the start of the job, 25% once they complete the job, and then the final 25%, usually 30 days after the delivery or at delivery. Also, if there are any bonuses, that's when you would be negotiating that into the deal, especially sometimes they'll say, well, if we finish on time, we want a $15,000 bonus or whatever. So you need to be aware that that might come up. Qualitative expectations, the talent, the level of talent and the key artists, and the technology, the hardware and software compatibility. Whatever you do has to work with all of the others, just so they can all wind up on the same piece of video. Negotiating the deal is continued. Technical expectations, for example, formats, naming conventions, and so on, so that if it goes from one company to the other, people will be able to take a look at it and know what it is. Communication and decision making, establish approval stages, production reports and tracking system. Terminology must be common from one shop to the next. Travel, shipment of materials, title sequences, computer graphic elements, credit, and performance criteria. Page 169, Overseas Supervisors. Here's where you need material packing and shipments. You need clear, concise communication, and information system is critical. You need to check continuity closely of the outgoing materials. You need to set up shared online tracking system. The producer should provide the following elements: the script, the storyboard, story reel, pre-visualized reel, visual style guide and/or model packages, layout keys or pre-visualization shots, background keys, audio tracks, reference materials, for example, photos, books, and DVDs, Video digital reference movies, for example, the director acts out scenes and so on. Route sheets, shot summary including summary of each shot, the length of the camera moves, the effect shots, the color texture treatments, and names of staff overseeing or responsible for the work. Page 171, handing out the project. Key crew should meet at the onset for a handoff meeting. That means when we have everything done, you sort of formally, and people are signing things saying they're in receipt of materials and so on, but you can't remember if you handed it to get this guy or that guy. Everything has to be logged very well so you know exactly where things are, because whatever you produce is going to be of value in perpetuity, probably forever, or at least for the not too distant future. Preferably in person or teleconference is how you would do the handoff of the project. All questions asked and answered. It may take a day or two to 1 week, and then the meeting will help assure all are on the same page. Page 172, monitoring the progress of production. Here's where you closely monitor the progress as things move through the system. You establish a system of weekly reports and then weekly or bi-weekly meeting or teleconferencing, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Page 174, receiving material from the subcontractor or from the vendor. Producer and director review the returned materials on the receipt as soon as they get them. They review and reject incorrect submissions. It all has to be right. The technical reshoot, and maybe they disobeyed camera instructions and so on. If that happens, they must revise at no charge. And this is billable only when the revision is new direction. Otherwise, if it's old direction, they can't bill you again because you've already told them to do it. They wanted to do a certain way. If they don't get it right, they have to do it for free. Page 174, expect the unexpected. Materials may get lost, so have backups. Supervisors may quit, so be prepared to have someone fill their place, if not you. Studios can burn down, so have materials in the cloud. Governments may be overthrown, so I don't know what you can do about that, but be fully aware of all the options and have contingency plans in place. And that's pretty much it for Chapter 7, Producing Animation. Thank you for watching.